Gravity Nerds, DIY volume kits specifically designed for your garage woody. Hey guys, Kevin here with Gravity Nerds, and today we're doing a build video on our medium triangle DIY volume kit. This is an example of a almost finished build right here. Just working on some coats of paint on that guy right there. So that is what we're gonna do, and here is what we're going to use to do it. This is the Gravity Nerds triangle volume kit, and when you receive your kit, you're going to get the 3 faces for your triangular volume, a couple corner braces. We'll take a look at what those are for. The T-nuts that are gonna go on the inside, and then optionally, you might have chosen to purchase the Grit Kit add-on, which is what I'm using to apply our finish and paint on that example volume right there. This is a combination of glue, paint, and aluminum oxide blasting grit, which will, if you choose, give you that nice professional finish on your volume when you are finished building. But first, we're gonna build this thing, and I'll show you a couple easy steps to put it together. I think you'll be happy with how simple it is to assemble this volume. So let's get to it. All right, so as far as assembly instructions go, you could probably figure this thing out with absolutely no help from me. This video will almost serve more to show you how simple it is rather than to tell you anything really important for your assembly. But you know, there are a couple tips and tricks that I can share kind of along the way, so here we go. First of all, you're gonna wanna do a dry fit of your pieces just to kind of see how everything goes together. So you'll notice that some of these pockets are recessed, and when I say pocket, it's because these brackets are gonna fit inside there. So some of these pockets are recessed from the edge, where some of them are closer to the edge. So the way this fits together is this will overlap, making that pocket the same distance as that pocket, so we can fit the bracket inside there. So you're going to find one piece that's the biggest, one piece that's the smallest, and one piece that's in between. So the smallest sits on the biggest, and the in-between. And anyway, it's like a puzzle. You'll figure it out. Just mess around with that until all the holes kind of match up right there. And then if you want to, you can dry fit with your brackets too. And the way I would kind of recommend that is start on your biggest piece and fit those brackets in. And we'll fit those down nice and tight once we get some glue going on. And then I'm going to just fit the second biggest side, and then add my brackets here. And there's a little bit of an order of operations with when you should add the brackets to what side, and again, you'll figure it out. If you just follow that order, you'll get it. But anyhow, that's a dry fit. So that's what things are gonna look like once we glue everything up. Now, I've always been curious, would this be strong enough to just screw that to the wall with no glue at all and still hold? And I wonder if maybe it would be. For the record, I do not recommend doing that. You should assemble your volume with glue. But these CNC cut, you know, precision brackets, man, they really do a great job of holding everything together. They're super strong, really easy to assemble. They take a lot of the guesswork out of the whole thing. So anyway, all I'm gonna do now is glue the whole thing up. So I'll talk about a couple points and just show you a couple things, and then we'll fast forward through most of that process. First thing is first, I like to use just regular wood glue, carpenter's glue. Today I'm using Titebond brand wood glue. There's a couple correct answers for this. You could also use, well, I'll leave that up to you. There's really no wrong glues for this application, because like I said, once you get these brackets going on, they are just so darn strong. So really the only thing to say here is that I'm going to apply glue to every surface that's going to be touching something with this bracket, and you'll see what that means as you go, and you'll kind of get a feel for where glue needs to be and where it doesn't need to be. When in doubt, just go ahead and put glue on it, because it's the inside of your volume, so who really cares what it looks like, and more glue is just gonna help everything be stronger. So I'm gonna get that seated there, and if you have a mallet, you could just give it a quick tap just to really make sure that it's seated down there in the slot. So like I said, I'm just going to run around and apply all this glue, and I'll fast forward this part. The other thing you're going to do is see me apply a bead of glue anywhere where the two faces are going to join. So I'll do that in just a second here, and I'm going to use this kind of technique. I'm not super surgical about all this stuff, just kind of applying the glue and using my finger to spread it out. It doesn't have to be a work of art because, again, this is all on the inside. And then my next face is just going to fit right on there. And sometimes it takes just a little bit of wrestling to get that to go. But once you get that to seat with those brackets, that's all good. So now, fast forward. Okay, so as you can see, I've got all my sides nicely joined up with all of my brackets. One last thing I'm going to do now is flip this thing over, and from the top, looking at it from the top, I can reference all these reveals right here to make sure that we are close. And I'm also going to push it down against my tabletop here to give myself a flat reference plane, so these edges sit flat against that. So if there's any wiggle left in my brackets or whatnot, I can kind of take it out on this step. Don't worry if you get an edge that's just a little bit proud, or if you have just a little bit of a gap. These kits are machined to be within a 1/16 of an inch tolerance, so you should be pretty close to that. A little bit of sanding can knock down these edges, no problem, and then a little bit of putty will fill in those gaps. Similarly, no problem. These kits are made out of plywood. Plywood is an organic material, so you are going to get just a little bit of variation, a little bit of warping. It can change its dimensions based on temperature and humidity, so when you see little variations like that, not to worry, that's normal, and we're going to take those out with our next step. So once you get everything fit nice and tight, we're going to leave this to dry at least a couple hours. If you have the patience to go overnight, that's even better. But give this thing at least a couple hours to dry, and then we'll come along with our putty and with our sanding. All right, the brackets have dried. Our next step is going to be to putty our volume, and you can see on this piece of plastic I just had already mixed up some. I'm building another volume at the same time as this one for 2 different videos. So I'm just going to add a little more wood glue and go ahead and add some sawdust to make our filler putty. The sawdust that we're using is sawdust that I collected from the CNC machine and the table saw. So it is decent stuff for making putty. It works okay. If you have access to sanding putty, and what I mean by that is like if you have an orbital sander or like a palm sander that has a little bag that collects sawdust, that sawdust will be a little bit finer, and I find it works a little bit better than this stuff. This stuff does work. It'll do the job for sure, but the other stuff might just go a little bit faster, save you a little time because it's a little bit finer, so it kind of squeezes into these gaps a little better. And that's what this puttying is all about. We're just looking for those little gaps and kind of squeezing this stuff in here. And this is just going to make our job easier in painting and in sanding and texturing. So there's not too much gap to fill. It's a pretty good fit. I know, because I designed it that way myself. Just kidding. So anyway, it's not too big of a job, but like I said, a little bit of attention to detail right here will save you a little bit of effort down the road and help you get that nice, smooth finish that we're all looking for in our volumes. I can also use putty to kind of bridge a gap. So this face is a little proud. It's sticking up just a little bit in relation to this edge. So I'm just going to rub kind of a bead of putty along that whole lip that's right there. And I'm going to sand that whole lip down. But this little bit of putty will help to just ease that transition a little bit and just make it a little easier, a little less time spent in sanding. And then if I have some nicks or dings on the corners of the parts here, I can add a little bit of putty right there to just, and I'll take that down here in sanding, in just a minute. So I think we have, yeah, looks great. Putty step complete. All right, we just came in from sanding and things are looking really nice. A couple notes on sanding. Take a lot of material away from the corners, about as much as you have patience for. The more round those are, the happier you'll be in the long run. Additionally, get a nice rounded corner on all of these corners, and then even these bottom edges here. It might look like a nice crisp edge right now, but as soon as you ding that up a little bit, it's not gonna look so crisp. So it'll actually be stronger if you round it off just a little bit. And you can do some work to take down just the high spots with any of your joints. Cool, so that's about it for sanding. The next step would be painting. Now, a quick plug for the Gravity Nerds Grit Kit, available as an add-on for any Gravity Nerds volume purchase. It comes with aluminum oxide 80 grit, which is my favorite media for adding texture to a volume, as well as wood glue and latex paint here. And you can see the technique for applying those things to get a really nice finish in the video linked down below on the Gravity Nerds Grit Kit. So I would paint next, if you are gonna paint. And then you would go ahead and add in your T-nuts. So I'm just gonna go ahead and show you how to do this, even though I haven't painted this volume yet, which I will. So the one quick note about your T-nuts, not too much to say here other than you can overdrive these screws. They're just these little guys. So don't really pound these things in here. I'm using a drill with a variable clutch and I have it set pretty low. So you want that to engage just as you're bottoming out that screw. If you over torque these, it'll strip out the screw hole a little bit and your connection just won't be as strong. So anyway, if you are not gonna paint, go ahead and drive all of your T-nuts. And then the last step would be drilling your pilot holes for your screws that you're going to use to connect this to the climbing wall. Let me pause our video for a second and I'll grab some hardware to demonstrate. All right, when it comes to drilling your holes for your mounting screws that you're going to use to mount this to your climbing wall, I recommend drilling a pilot hole. I recommend not just going straight in with that screw, and the main reason for that is consistency. You want all of these holes pretty consistent, and the main reason there is the angle with which you place that screw is really going to affect how much of that screw goes into your climbing wall, and thus how strong of a connection you've got. So I like to do 2 screws per side, and I've got this nice countersink bit. If you have one of those, awesome, use it. If you don't have one of those, that's okay. Any old drill bit is gonna work for you. So I'm gonna just start drilling some holes around the perimeter of this bad boy, and I think I already said, but I do 2 screws per side. A quick word on the screws we're going to use to mount this thing to the climbing wall, because not all screws are created equal. This screw right here is a number 8, a pretty beefy piece of hardware. And this is the kind of screw I'm gonna recommend. It's got a T25 head on it for driving that bad boy in, and you're gonna feel great when that thing is anchoring your volume to your wall. Sometimes you'll see people screwing these things in with drywall screws, and I would call this a drywall screw. It's a number 6, so obviously number 8 screw versus number 6, well, there's just a lot more material on this guy. This is going to be a stronger connection. Think about this thing like a rusty 1/4 inch bolt that you're clipping when you're sketched out on lead. You know, could it catch a whipper? Maybe, I don't know, but I would certainly be a lot happier clipping some beefier hardware. So you might as well use the same philosophy in attaching these climbing volumes to your climbing wall. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is go ahead and drive this thing and just see how far it is poking out in the back. So, okay, that's a great amount of screw that's going to be anchoring into your climbing wall, so I'm really comfortable with that. So I would just go ahead and drive a couple of those, see where they're ending up, so you have a clue as to how much of that screw is actually in the plywood of your climbing wall, so you know how strong that connection is. Thanks for watching our build video today. Hope your volume turns out sick. I know it will. It's going to be awesome. Check out gravitynerds.com for this and other DIY volume kits, and I hope I see you at the Crag sometime.